Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be tuning in from. My name is Paul Bradley, Managing Director of Spoke Project Management. We're one of the global leaders for project program and portfolio management training. And what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be taking you through part 2 of this Project Management Essentials series. Yesterday, we looked at absolute beginners. It was a high-level overview of project management for newcomers to the industry. And today, I'm going to dig a little deeper, and we have changes, setting up the project. And what we're going to be covering over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to be looking at requirements and understanding how we establish requirements, where they come from. We're going to be looking at getting off to a good start in the project through the project charter, establishing the background and reasons for undertaking the project and so on. And then we're going to start coming through the project definition or initiation stages, where we start going through breakdown structures so that we can understand the scope of our project. From there, I'm going to take you through quality management, the 4 different elements of quality management: planning, control, assurance, and continual improvement. And then to finish off, we're going to look at the contents of the PID, Project Initiation Document, or Project Management Plan. I'm using different terminology for different areas, so you can interpret my my language as you wish. I will be switching between IPMA, Prince2, APM, Agile, and so on in terms of my terminology, but I'll let you know when I do that. Okay. Right. So, firstly, we're going to take a look at requirements. With regards to requirements, we need to understand what the needs and expectations are of our customers and the stakeholders. Now, of course, with needs and expectations, these can be sometimes quite high level and sometimes vague, sometimes subjective. Now, we need to start somewhere, so this is not such a bad thing, but we can't undertake the project based on subjective criteria and assumptions, if you like. So what we need to do is we need to start drilling down and understanding what the requirements are, clarifying these with the stakeholders, and also analysing those requirements to make sure we haven't got any overlaps or any gaps in the requirements and so on. We also, very early on in the project, before the project starts, preferably, we need to understand what those expectations are and those requirements, but also ensure that the project is aligned to our organisational goals. All projects must be aligned to an organisation's goals, because if they're not, then they're not going to get the backing of the organisation. They're not going to make the key differences to the organisation, and ultimately you won't achieve the outcomes and the benefits. So strategy will set our way forward for the organisation, and then it's up to a layer such as portfolio management that will be looking to align our projects, our change initiatives, with those overall strategic goals. And what we have is we need to understand what those goals are, and as I say, it's portfolio management or a strategic layer that will align our goals with the organisation. We need to understand what benefits need to be achieved from our projects. If you were with me yesterday, I did mention the business case, and I made a point that projects should not start unless you've got clearly defined benefits that are documented in a business case. That is the driving force of the project. So we need to understand what we're trying to achieve from a benefits point of view, a measured improvement. And we need to clarify what the objectives are. And I think yesterday we looked at SMART objectives. If you weren't with us yesterday, then you can request the recordings from yesterday's session, where we did a little bit on objectives in terms of SMART objectives and establishing, what the project needs to achieve. If the project doesn't achieve its objectives, we can't fulfill and realise the benefits. Okay, and if we can't achieve the benefits, then we're not fulfilling the organisational goals. And part of this understanding is to establish which stakeholders' requirements we need to fulfill. Now, requirements come in all shapes and sizes. They come from all different types of stakeholders in our projects. And indeed, what I have is just an example here. Okay, I put a couple of examples up yesterday of objectives and such, and I've got a few requirement examples here. Imagine if you was building a new centre in your local town. You may have lots and lots of different stakeholders that have an interest in the project, and they could potentially all have very many different requirements. Now, the type of stakeholders that we have in this example are local community groups, volunteers, funders, the local authority, communities, and the local business sector. And as you can see there, I'm not going to read through every one of these, but you can see that local community groups, the centre must provide affordable space hire options. Okay, so that the community can benefit, at an affordable rate for space. You think of other community members, older residents. Look, the centre must provide comfortable seating areas for the older residents so they can be nice and comfortable for when they meet up on their socials. What about investment? Well, from an investment point of view, you've got the funders. Funders, well, we need value for money. Yeah. Whether you get a return on the investment on a community project is another story, but regardless, we need value for money for that investment to make sure that we're delivering on our investment. And any value for money investment should be measurable in terms of where the money is going. Also, local businesses. Yeah, remember we've got to continue the investment in a community venue. It's not going to look after itself. We've got one in our own little village. I live in a small village in Dorset, and we've got a village hall and a social club, all run by volunteers. And we need new windows. And for 5 windows, I think we've been quoted. It's a 5-figure number. Yeah, so we're saving up for that. Now it needs investment and it needs support. And it's local businesses who can provide that support by having a facility there that can bring in funds and revenue on an ongoing basis. So again, another stakeholder. Okay. So lots of different things to think about there in terms of different stakeholders having different requirements. So what do we do with all these requirements? Well, one way we can start to cut our cloth to meet our budget is using a technique called Moscow. Now, some may have heard of Moscow, some may not have done. It's widely used in agile environments where we prioritize stakeholder requirements. And it's abbreviated to Moscow because you got the M is must have. This is essentially the project might as well not continue if we do not deliver on the must-haves. Okay, so we must guarantee to deliver must-have requirements. Okay, so this is when we're prioritizing them, and if we don't, then the project just won't work. Should-haves are strong supporters of the must-haves. If we delivered something that is just on must-haves, it'd be okay, it'd work, but your customer probably wouldn't be too happy. It wouldn't work that well, but we've delivered a viable product. Should-haves make it a better product. So we should always look to deliver the must and shoulds. Could-haves are nice to haves, nice features, things that we can add in should we have enough money and time and resource and so on. And then the won't have is very much won't have for now. Okay, or won't have this time. That will be outside of the scope of the project. We won't be delivering the clear exclusions, the won't haves. It may change though, over time we might look at bringing in some of the won't haves, but at this point in time that's an exclusion. Okay. So I was sitting here earlier, looking at this list of requirements, thinking about our local village hall actually. And I thought, I wonder if we did a Moscow prioritization workshop on the stakeholder requirements that are on the screen. So I was going to do that, but yesterday we had I think we had about 150, 200 people on the session. So I'm not sure we got that many this time, but nevertheless, I thought it's going to be a little bit messy if we tried to workshop it, so I did it myself. And this is what I came up with. Now, this is all subjective, of course, but I said that local community groups centre must provide affordable space hire. Well, I thought as a must-have. I mean, that's what we're putting this venue in for. So that's a must-have. It wouldn't really function otherwise. Should have would be volunteers must have a designated storage area for their equipment, so they don't have to keep bringing it in and out and bringing it in and out. It's like, well, you know, it's not really a must-have. You know, we can transport the equipment for volunteers. I've put it as a should have, but I'm starting to wonder whether it could be a could have now, actually. It's not an essential, be nice. I think that sits between a should have and a could have for me. Funders, okay, must deliver value for money. That is a must have for me. You know, we need a good investment and we need to show that that money is being spent well. Also, local authority must comply with health and safety regulations and have good fire exits. Again, a must-have is health and safety. You can't compromise on that, I'm afraid. Older residents in the centre want comfortable seating. Well, that's very subjective as well, isn't it? Comfortable seating. But I'll put that as a could have. You know, it is nice to have the comfortable seating for the elder generation and for the younger generation, to be honest. So I felt that was probably a nice to have if we can get that, and then I should have local businesses for supporting the ongoing funding of the centre. Otherwise, I should have, almost a must have, but probably a should have. When prioritising these type of requirements for any development cycle that you might be undertaking, typically you would not have more than 60% must-haves, and the reason for that is because you need to leave yourself a 40% headroom to guarantee delivering the must-haves. Okay, so typically you would not aim to have more than 60% of musts. And also, if you've ever been in one of these workshops for prioritising requirements, you will find that most of your stakeholders will fight their corner for their own requirement. And that basically means that you're going to have to be quite strong as a facilitator for that workshop. And if they're fighting for must-haves all the way through, look them in the eye and say, if we don't deliver this, are we going to close the project? And you will find that a lot of them go from must to should. And you can have an important should. You can categorize the shoulds and the coulds if you want, but you'll find that a lot of these requirements wouldn't actually be a must-have. You know, we're not going to stop the project if we don't deliver it, but it is really, really important. That's fine. Okay, we'll classify that as a should. So that's a good way of prioritizing the various requirements that we may find ourselves needing to deliver. When I talk about requirements, there's two different types of requirements. We have functional requirements. This is basically, what will something do? Okay, what does it need to do? What does it need to satisfy? Okay, we also have non-functional requirements as well. The non-functional requirements is how well will it do it? So we're looking at performance metrics here. So what's it got to do and how well should it perform? I might want to transfer data from my old laptop to my new laptop. So I need something to transfer the data. Okay, I don't know what that is, but a functional requirement is to transfer my files from laptop old to laptop new. That's a functional requirement. A non-functional requirement is I want it to transfer those files at 100 files every hour. Okay. Sounds slow, doesn't it? But hey, you get the idea. Okay, it's a performance metric. What is not a requirement is how it's going to do it. How it's going to do it is basically the solution. It's when we go into solution design. And all too often, we find that people rush to find the solution before they really understand what the requirements are. And this is why quite often we find ourselves delivering something that's not quite what the stakeholders were expecting. Right, so once we've understood the requirements and also leading up to all of this requirements gathering, we need to think about how we capture and analyze those requirements. Now, there's a typical 5-step approach for requirements management, and the first step being capture. We capture the requirements, usually looking to call them from the stakeholders themselves. Okay, so if you're ever wondering where these requirements come from, talk to your customers. That's where they're coming from. Talk to the users. Capture those requirements, and then we can analyze them. Analyzing is looking at each of the requirements, making sure it has a purpose, making sure that we don't have any overlaps with other requirements, making sure that there are no gaps between those requirements, and that everything's going to hang together properly. Each of the requirements need to be justified, that they are needed, and we can do that through Moscow prioritization as well. And once we've agreed those requirements, we can use this thing called baselining. Baselining is basically approving what we're going to deliver. Okay, and from there, if there's any change to those requirements, then it needs to go through a proper control of change, if that's what we're looking at. Also, we need a mechanism for testing to make sure that we understand when that requirement is met. Okay, so that would be like a measurable objective test. Now, running alongside this, and largely around the very early stages of any project, we would look at establishing a project charter. Okay, project charter is a term that is used quite widely across project management environments. You may be familiar with the term the project brief. Okay, particularly if you have a Prince 2 background, project brief. But it's essentially pulling together all the information for the project. Okay, so what we've got is within a project charter, a typical project charter, you'd have headings similar to what I've got on the screen here. You've got project objectives. Okay, so what does the project need to achieve? What are the desired outcomes? Now, outcomes from a project are the new way, okay, the future state of working. Essentially, what projects do, projects deliver an output, a deliverable, a thing. And by using those new products or those new services, we would have a different way of doing things. Now, that different way of doing things is known as an outcome. So we're looking at seeing what the desired outcomes are. And as a result of that, what we would do is we would, having achieved the outcomes, you'd expect that we can then go on to accrue and realize benefits. We also need to understand the scope of the project. Now, scope of the project will be based on a sort of a simple diagram that I drew yesterday, funnily enough. I talked about identifying all the different things that we may well deliver, and then literally put in a ring round what would be in scope. Everything outside of that would be excluded from the scope. It may well be that we use breakdown structures so that we can identify what will be delivered as part of our project. Okay, I've got quite a few slides on scope management and such in a few moments' time, so bear with me on that. So scope and exclusions, got constraints. You might have security constraints, time constraints, resource constraints, access constraints, and so on, that are going to impact on the project potentially. Tolerances for the project. So these are permissible deviations. It may be that you've been given £100,000 budget for your project and 10 weeks, and there may be a permissible deviation from that of, say, 10%. And that way you've got an enablement, like an empowerment to manage within those. Okay. Stakeholders and known interested parties and interfaces. So who are the stakeholders? Who has an interest in your project? They may be funders, they may be the community, they may be regulators, it might be the organisation, might be partners, might be the project management team themselves. Okay, so looking at who are the stakeholders, what power they have, what interest they have in your project, what influence they might have on decision making, and who's going to get what information. Okay, how are we going to interface with them and communicate with them? So that's the sort of thing we're looking at trying to pull together very, very early on in the project. Some of it will be early pre-project if we've got that facility, or very early on in the startup phases of any project. Okay, so that's the project brief and the project charter. Sounds like a lot of information, but when you actually do it, you realize that this is it's not much different to what we generally do. I'm just putting a bit of structure together here. Okay. Also, still in the charter and the brief, you might look at things like an outline business case. Now, an outline business case is very much a skeleton business case because we haven't got all the details of the planning and the estimates and the costs and the timescales for doing the work. But we may have a budget, we may have an outline return on investment, possibly or we certainly need to understand what benefits we're going to achieve from the project. Otherwise, we shouldn't really start it. Okay, so we're looking at an outline business case there. Even if it's in skeleton, that's what outline means. When we get into the actual project, it will be a developed business case. We look at options, different ways of achieving the same thing. We got the do nothing option, and we got the do minimum option, and we've got to do everything options. Okay, so we're weighing up different ways. Expected benefits, as I spoke about, and also the risks that we know that could compromise the project. Be careful on this because typically if you've got very high benefits, they would usually attract very high risk, and vice versa. Very seldom do we get a situation where we have high benefit and low risk situations. And if you do find those, then I'd recommend you go for them. We're also looking at things under the quality umbrella, like critical success factors and KPIs, key performance indicators. And critical success factors are, it needs to be delivered on time. It needs to be delivered within the costs. It needs to meet all the must-haves of the requirements that we've just been looking at. Now, they're critical success factors that apply to the overall project, to the full timescale, which can be quite difficult to trace throughout the project life, especially if your project is going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's like, how can we track progress and performance against that? We're going to look at performance, progress and forecasting tomorrow, actually, in the Let's Dance session. But at this point, we're establishing what those critical success factors are. And the way to monitor progress against those is to put in various milestones. And each of those milestones may be a significant delivery point and produce a KPI, key performance indicator, to say, look, if we get this far, this is what we should have achieved so far. And if we've achieved this so far, then we are on track to meeting those critical success factors. Also, still on the project charter, starting to build information as we come through the very early stages of the project. We've got the project approach, and the project approach is about make or buy. Do we have the resources to deliver this project ourselves, or are we going to have to bring in external resources? Are we going to have to outsource? Could we go into partnership with another organisation, perhaps set up a JV, joint venture? So lots of different approaches that we might take. But also thinking about, are we going to start from scratch? Maybe we might buy something in, off the shelf. Maybe we've got something already that we can develop and work on and build up. Okay, so lots of things to think about there. And the final thing on that list is the project management team. We're looking at the structure and we're looking at the role descriptions. Okay, so who's going to be involved? Who's the sponsor, the project manager, the project teams, the specialist teams, assurance teams, support functions, and so on. Okay, are they available? Can they commit to the project? And if so, let's get them on board, create job descriptions so that everybody knows what they're doing and where the authority lies. So that's all around the project charter. Okay. As we come through that project and start coming through project initiation or project definition, same thing, by the way, project initiation very much aligned to Prince 2, project definition very much aligned to APM and IPMA and so on. Okay, but coming in to set the project up, this is where we need to understand the scope of the project. Okay. And the way we understand the scope of the project is we create product breakdown structures and then work breakdown structures. Now, many of you may well have already used work breakdown structures, but it's good practice to start with the products first, the outputs, so we understand what we're delivering before we start thinking about what we're going to do. And by understanding the products that we're delivering, this will help us establish the scope of the project. So I've got an example here. I was trying to think, what example shall I do? Shall I do it on the new leisure centre that we're going to build? I could have done actually. That might have been quite good fun. Perhaps I'll do it next time. I thought, no, I'll do it on a training course. You know, this is what we know best here at Spoke. So I've got a training course. Okay, this is the product breakdown structure. Okay, so these are products, these are outputs. Okay, there's no activity here. Okay, I'm just breaking it down. So what makes up our training courses? Well, we got training material and we've got exams. Add them together, you've got a training course. If I start breaking down further the training material, well, I've got trainer material, so i.e. my material, and we've got learner material for you guys. And I can break that down even further if I want. The trainer material, I've got course slides, which I'm using at the moment, and I've got course or trainer notes, okay, which I haven't got at the moment because you know, I've not done them. But hey, I put the slides together, so I know what I'm supposed to be saying. But you typically have course slides, trainer notes, and then that makes up the trainer material. Okay, all the trainer material and learner material make up the material which develops into the training course with the exams. Learner material, we usually provide an official manual and a course workbook with all the exercises in. So you get the idea. You don't have to break down just to 2. You may break down to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sub-products, whichever is useful for this process. So there you go. So that's a product breakdown structure. I'd recommend trying it. It works really, really well. Try it on a holiday or weekend break or something. You know, it works really, really well to understand what we need to deliver in terms of the output. What we can then do is we can understand each of these outputs, each of these products. We usually write things like product descriptions, you know, describing each of those and what they need to do. And then what we can do is we can then start getting into understanding what the work is. Okay, so for each of these, like the course slides, those white boxes that I've put on there, they represent the activities. So in order to produce the course slides, what I've got is I'm going to create the slide template, collate some graphics, recolor the graphics, resize the graphics, and animate the graphics. Okay, that's good. And also, I'm going to create the text from the course syllabus, add in some experience, and assemble the text with the graphics. Good. Okay, so that's activities. And if I complete those activities, they give me my course slides. Fantastic. So it's a work breakdown structure. And I can do that for each of those bottom level products, as you can see there. Okay. Works really well. The work breakdown structure, WBS. So the top half, the blue boxes, are a product breakdown structure. The bottom half is the activities that I'm going to undertake in order to produce those products. Okay. Fantastic. So now I know what I've got to deliver and what I've got to do. In total, what you're looking at there is the scope of my project. And then I can use this even better, because what I can do is I can then start using those that work breakdown structure to identify my work streams and my work packages. Okay, so what I'm going to do is all those course slides, to produce the course slides, I'm going to put all those activities into a work package and give it to one of my developers. Okay. I've got another work package there that covers the trainer notes, and I've got another work package there. So 3 work packages altogether to deliver and develop those course materials. Okay, it may well be I just put the whole thing in one work package. It depends what way you want to break it up, okay, and delegate it, and that works really well. What you will notice, I've not broken down exams and I've not broken down the official manual, and this is because I'm not going to develop those myself. It'd be good if we could develop the exams, because then we'd know exactly what we're aiming for with certification. But we're not. Okay, we're certainly not going to write a new official manual. It's already been written. They already exist. So therefore, I'm not going to break those down to see what I need to do to develop them. But they become part of my scope because they have an impact and influence on the other outputs that I'm delivering. Okay. So that's how I do scope management. each one of those will have criteria. Okay, so each one of these products here, I would write quality criteria for. Okay, so there you go. So I've got all my quality criteria written. Course slides, I don't know, must be minimum of 6 slides per session, must be consistent with the syllabus. Must be 20-point font so people can read the text on the slide from a distance. And must conform to R&IB guidelines. Yeah, marvelous. So that way I've got a way of testing each of these products, and that's known as quality criteria. So again, it helps me, really dig into the delivery. All this criteria relates to quality, which is my next session. Okay. And with quality, we've got quality management. So what I'm going to do with quality, I'm not going to dig too deep into the actual product quality. I mean, I've sort of done that on the previous slide there. Okay, that's the product quality. Okay, but what I'm going to do here, I'm going to think about quality management from a project point of view. And what I have is I have 4 key elements of quality. The first one being quality planning. And with quality planning, what I'm doing is I'm establishing my quality management system. Okay, well, not establishing my quality management system. I've got a quality management system. And within that quality management system, I'll have standards, regulation, policy. I might have ISO standards. Okay, I might have procedures, and so on. Okay, this quality management system will exist anyway, whether I'm running a project or not. Quite typically, what you'll find. Let's just move that over a bit. I think I'll do it over here. What you'll find is standards, your QMS. Okay, so this will be your ISO standards, regulation, legal. Yeah, you might have employment law, you might have health and safety, and so on. And that is applied to various parts of your organisation. Okay, it's usually quality assurance that's applying it and making sure it's being done properly. And then, of course, when we have a project, there you go. I've got a project here and a project here. Oh, well, my pen won't let me draw a second project. Perhaps it thinks I'm doing too much. Okay, so this project here, project A and project B, I'm making sure that the relevant standards are being applied to each of the projects. Okay. Because I'm working for the organisation and the organisation needs to comply to that. Also, what I've got, project A is an internal project. Okay, it's just using internal resources. Project B, on the other hand, is using an external supplier, and the external supplier has also got a quality management system. And what needs to happen is the supplier needs to make sure that their quality management system is being embedded in terms of standards in the work that they're doing on our project, because that's their standards. And in this instance, what we need to do as part of quality planning, we need to make sure that we've got, excuse me, let's just get rid of that. I was supposed to be an H, harmony between the 2 quality systems. That sounds lovely, doesn't it? So we're trying to harmonize the 2. And this is why sometimes when we're looking at our project approach where we're going to outsource or bring people in, sometimes, we find that we can't work with another organization because our standards are not compatible with the supplier standards. And therefore, that's where it becomes quite difficult to, or a challenge, should I say, to, to really harmonize those 2 standards together. Okay, but that's all part of quality planning, understanding the quality management systems. Okay, also, as part of all of this, we need to think about the acceptance criteria. Okay, and the quality criteria. Now, I've already talked about quality criteria in the previous slide. Remember, with the quality criteria, if I just go back a slide, this is all very much being written for each of my products. Okay, that's quality criteria. But also what I have is I have acceptance criteria, and this is for the overall project. Okay, remember I was just talking about the critical success factors. Typically, critical success factors align with your acceptance criteria in terms of what does the end deliverable need to do. Okay. And also part of quality planning is when we're doing our plans, okay, we would embed quality activity within our stage plans to make sure that testing is being done at the relevant places by the right people and so on. Okay, so it's all part of quality planning as we're going through the project. The second step of quality is quality assurance, and it's quality assurance who create and maintain those quality management systems, you know, the ones that were in the loft in the roof that I just put up a moment ago. Okay, so what they do is they create and maintain a quality management system, and also they audit and make sure that those standards are being applied across your organization and into your projects. Okay, to make sure that we're doing things in the right way. Okay. Next up, quality control. Now, quality control is basically the testing. What we've got in-process and assessment checks. We got various tests, physical, visual, sample testing, and so on. And what happens is, you know, what the way it works is, I've got a little breakdown structure here, okay? And in that breakdown structure, as a result of doing the breakdown structure, what I've done is I've written the criteria for each of those products, just like I did on the previous page. Then what I can do is I can create my plan. Okay, so this is my plan on how I'm going to deliver those two products. Okay, so naturally, this information here, okay, that criteria will form part of my plan. Okay, it's all part of my quality planning. Okay, I've got one there and I've got one there. Okay, and what's going to happen, I'm going to carry out the activity, and at the end of the activity, I'm going to deliver the product. So in this case, it's a yellow cube. Okay, there you go. And what I'm going to do is along the way, the green, by the way, is representing my quality planning. Along the way, I'm going to have a little test there. I'm going to have a little test there. Okay, these are in process testing because it's as I'm going along, making sure I'm on track. And then what will happen is when the product is delivered, I'm going to measure whether this product meets that criteria. Okay. Are the sides yellow? Are the walls white? And is it 1 centimeter cubed? Okay. Yes, yes, yes. That test is quality control. Okay. And I'll do exactly the same for the second product there. Okay. In which case this time, yeah, I'm going to deliver a purple box, purple cube, and I'll have the same assessment. Okay. I would have planned when that quality check's going to happen, who's going to do it, and what they're testing against. Okay, yes, yes, yes. Sign the product up. Okay, and that's quality control. And how you test these things, well, is very much in accordance with what it is you're delivering, of course. Okay, so that all works really nicely as well. That's quality control. And then we have continual improvement. Okay, and this is very much about feeding back what we do and how we can improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our processes and procedures. So this is very much being fed back up to quality assurance. Okay, so that the QMS can be updated and the standards can be updated if necessary. Okay, giving good feedback, saying, look, this worked really well, but it'd be really good if we did this as well. Okay. And that people were aware of that. So it may well be that we can update some of the standards and everything that can then be put into planning for future projects to improve the way we do things. But also planning quality like this assures us that we're going to be delivering fit for purpose products that will meet the stakeholders' expectations and requirements. So again, all happening, by the way, all happening during project initiation and definition. So everything I've gone through this afternoon is very early on in the project, making sure we get set up properly. Okay, it's really important. Finally, we've got design the project with the, well, we've got the PID and the PMP there, okay. The PID, project initiation documentation, PMP, project management plan, depending on what you're using. You might be using PMI, you might be using IPMA, you might be using APM, you might be using Prince2. Okay, you'll probably come across either a PID or a PMP. Typically, that's usually the phrases that they use. And what we've got here is a few sections that I've put together for you in terms of what you'd expect to see in that PID or PMP. Essentially, it's the roadmap for the project. I covered some of this yesterday, if anybody recognizes any of this. And what I've got is, firstly, you've got a section here called project definition. And a project definition is bringing everything from the pre-project forward. Remember what I did very early on in this presentation when I was talking about the requirements and I was talking about the project charter. Okay. And in fact, I'll tell you what I will do. I'm going to go back to that project charter. There it is. Okay, so all of this information here that I've put together hasn't gone to waste. It's helped to establish whether the project is worthwhile and indeed viable to actually carry out. It's got a lot of information there. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to bring that forward into my PID, okay, or PMP, and that forms mostly part of the project definition. But also, what it does is enables me to understand what the background of the project is, what the objectives are. I've got the scope of the project. The scope of the project that comes directly from here. Okay, the product breakdown and the work breakdown structure. So I'm putting that into my PID as well. Fantastic. My project approach. Project approach. Didn't I mention that earlier? I think I probably did, didn't I? With the project approach, I mentioned that here from the project charter. Okay, the make or buy, build from scratch, develop, outsource. Well, hey, what happens if we outsource? Well, if we're outsourcing, I'm going to jump back to that one. Okay, got to think about that harmony between the customer and supplier with quality planning. So there you go. See, it all ties together. We're pulling it all in to create a PID to act as the baseline documentation for our project. Okay, and of course, it's all fundamentally driven by the business case. Okay, detailing the benefits, the whole reason we're undertaking this project. Also, we have management strategies. What are management strategies, I hear you ask? Okay, management strategies is basically how we're going to manage the project. So how are we going to plan quality? Well, we're going to plan quality in the way that I've just told you. Okay. What about change control? How are we going to do that? Well, tune in on Thursday and I'll tell you how to do change control, because that's on the changes session I'm going to deliver, and I'm going to take you through a change control 5-step procedure to show how we manage changes within our project and how we manage the scope and so on. Okay, there's usually a standard procedure that you might have within your organization. Okay, it's usually fairly similar to the issue management procedure that you might have, and issues are not necessarily changes. I mean, they could be, but also you'll be dealing with like overspends, overruns, you know, staff going sick, you know, collapse of contractors, that sort of thing. Okay. In addition to that, we're looking at how we're going to manage risk. We have a risk management approach. And the risk management approach, or the risk management strategy, will be explaining to us how we manage risks. Well, we need to identify them. We need to calculate and estimate the probability and impact. We need to think about what we're going to do about it from a response point of view. And then we need to make sure we've got that continual cycle so that we're continually seeing whether the risk is getting greater or whether it's stable or whether it's diminishing. Okay. And again, I think I'll probably do a bit of risk on I don't know, maybe on the Let's Dance thing tomorrow, you know, just to keep a handle on things. And finally, communication. How do we keep everybody informed? Well, we have a communication strategy or communication plan where we identify who needs to be kept informed, what they need to know, who's going to give that information, on what basis, what channels, what tools, and so on. Okay, very much keeping everybody informed, including the stakeholders, on how their requirements are being met. Super. Well, a lot of stuff there, eh? Well, I haven't finished yet because there's another two. Look, we have the organisation structure. The organisation structure is made up of all of the roles that we actually mentioned yesterday. We've got a sponsor, somebody who's ultimately accountable for the project, somebody to own the business case. We've got a project manager, somebody to manage the project on behalf of the sponsor. Now, in both of those roles, they mustn't be shared. Okay, there's got to be a clear one-person responsibility and accountability for that aspect of the project. Okay, if you've got a good relationship between a sponsor and a project manager, your project's probably going to deliver quite well. And then you've got the support functions. Okay, you've got the project management office, and over this side, they're very much dealing with the processes and the tools and the techniques and facilitation of meetings and that sort of thing. And you've got the project team, which may be assistant project managers helping the project manager out. You might have schedulers, risk managers, and so on. And then you've got project support, which is more of an admin function to move things around, do the configuration management, do the asset control, making sure we know where things are and who's working on what. And then you've got team managers and resources, who are the more specialist technical teams, the developers, the builders, the bricklayers, the people doing the technical work, so to speak. And of course, all of this needs to be backed up for each of the roles with responsibilities, accountability, and job descriptions for anybody who's been appointed. Okay, so that's the organisation structure session. So as I say, a lot of stuff in there. Okay, the project definition, strategies, the organisation structure, and one more, the project controls. Okay, and within the project controls, what we have here are the plans. Now, the plans have come from, well, the initial outline plan, if you like. We've got 3 levels of plan. We've got the overall project plan, and I'm going to go a little bit mad here, I'm afraid, because I haven't got any clear space on here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this. Okay, so ignore the background images, just concentrate on the black. Okay, what I've got here is I've got an overall project plan for my project. You think, wow, okay, then this is going from here to the end of the project. Naturally, it's going to be quite high level. Typically, what I'll have within there is I'll have management stages that I identify with decision points at the end of each of those stages on whether we continue with the project or not. Brilliant. Okay. What I also do is I have stage level plans, and my stage level plans, like I'm doing these in red. Okay. My stage level plans will be more detail. Okay. There you go. Now I'm gonna create the first stage plan around about here. Okay, and I'm gonna put this one together. Okay, and I'm gonna get it signed off. This next stage plan for stage 2, I'm gonna start creating probably around about here, get it signed off, and then we can get more detail and resources to do stage 2. Stage 3, I'm gonna create that stage plan probably around about here towards the end of stage 2, get it signed off. Let's go. Okay. So this is more detail. So we've got the project level plan and the stage level plan. Hang on a second. What else have we got? Well, within these, you may well have a whole load of smaller plans, which are team plans, more detail. Okay. And they relate to the work packages that we're doing. Okay. So suddenly we've got 3 levels of plan. We've got the project plan, stage plans, and team plans. And that's how we can control the project. Plan it in the right level of detail so that everybody knows what's going on. What we can then do is we can then make sure that we agree with the sponsor and the stakeholders what type of reports they need. Okay, so we've got a load of reports going on here. Usually maybe monthly reports, might want fortnightly reports. It depends what's required from the relevant parties. Okay, and they will facilitate good communication and updates for the stages. Okay. Also, at the end of each stage, as I just said, what we have is we have yes/no decisions. Okay. here's my stage plan. Can you give me the resources I need to run this stage for the project? It's either a yes or a no. It may be go and try again. Okay, I'll come back and present you with an alternative. What about now? Yes or no? Okay, we can't progress to the next stage of a project without agreement from the sponsor. Okay, and that commitment of resource for each of those stages. And that's keeping people informed, giving the right information to be able to make decisions, and making sure the project remains on track to deliver the stakeholders' requirements. Sometimes controls might be formal, maybe less formal, okay, depending on the type of project, whether you've done it before, how complex it might be, what the levels of risk are, what organisations are involved, and so on. Okay, now all of this information is being drawn into my project initiation document or my project management plan, and this is basically telling me how the project is going to be run. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to assemble all of this information, give it to my sponsor and say, hey, this is how we're going to manage your project. Happy? Yep. Happy with that. Sign it off. And that's baselined version 1.0 of your PID, and that's what we measure from. Okay. And that, my friends, is how we make sure that we've got the project set up in the right way to deliver successful change. Right, good. I see there's the information going up on the chat box, you know, of all of our courses that are coming up that support everything I've done. You've had a real flash through there in the last 50 minutes for setting the project up properly. It's good stuff, you know, you'll get a lot from that, I'm sure. If you want to go into more detail, then by all means, get in touch with Jean-Paul here. He's on the chat actually at the moment. sales@spoke.com. Put your email address in there, Jean-Paul, if you need to. JP, we call him. It's Jean-Paul's. You know, it's not don't flow off the tongue quite so well. I'm not sure what he calls me, but hey, there you go. So get in touch with Jean-Paul. We've got his WhatsApp number there as well, which is quite useful. We've got loads of courses coming up on all different topics. If you're new to project management, as I said yesterday, I'd probably recommend something like PFQ, APM PFQ. Okay, goes into all different aspects that I've been through today, and Prince2 Foundation. Some of these slides have come directly from Prince2 actually. We've got quite a lot of options there. We got them online so that we can deliver to you, or we can come to you if you've got a small group of people that need training. If you're experienced, you might want to look at more practitioner level or APM PMQ, which is one of the first steps you can take to chartered project professional. Fantastic. Okay. And in terms of who we are, well, we've been around for how long's that now? 94. 14, over 30 years now. Crikey, you know, it seems to have gone a little bit too fast, but there you go. We've got weekly scheduled classroom courses, e-learning, also on demand, where you can watch recordings from courses in your own time, which is great. Okay, so that's all great. And also, finally, honestly, finally, don't forget tomorrow. Yeah, I'm back on again. I better get the presentation built, hadn't I? In fact, I've got a product breakdown structure for that. I can follow that and get a good presentation done. Anyway, look, let's dance. Get things done. Okay. A little link there. Did you see that? And this is going to look at progress. I'm going to do a bit of variance reporting as well. Might even, well, I don't know, might dip into earned value analysis, which is, you know, I don't want to go too deep into that because otherwise we'll be here literally all night. Okay, but back tomorrow, 4 p.m, another hour in terms of getting things done. And then Thursday is the final one, Rebel, looking at what happens when things don't go according to plan, and having that change control and issue management approach. Okay, so that's going to be good fun. Tomorrow, 4 p.m. Don't forget to register for that. And then that way you can join me again for another fun-filled afternoon of project overview at speed. Okay, so hopefully you've enjoyed that. Do get in touch if you need any more information. I'm more than happy to have any discussions with you, as is JP. And good luck if you're not back tomorrow. I hope it's been useful, and we'll see you again soon. Okay, any questions you've got, put it in the chat and I'll answer them in the next 5 minutes while we're just letting everybody slip away. Okay. So I'm going to keep here. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat box. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow, 4 o'clock.